Hello and welcome to the CinemATL Podcast for December 2017.
2017, the last one.
The last one for The Last Jedi. We are doing our special
Star Wars edition.
Yeah, we do a Star Wars edition every Christmas because it seems like there's a new Star Wars every Christmas nowadays.
Exactly, that's great.
So this episode will be a little bit different than most of our podcasts. We're going to go really in-depth on The Last Jedi. We'll first, though, we're going to start out with some industry news. We're going to then we're going to jump into the Star Wars stuff. We're going to do a top three, which will be non-spoiler, and then we'll have a little bit of a non-spoiler review.
Very short.
And then after that, we'll get into a longer discussion about all the spoilers and a more in-depth coverage of the film.
So if you've seen it, it's all right. You can watch the whole podcast. If you haven't seen it yet, watch the beginning and then come back.
Yeah. And then, so after we do the review, the longer review of The Last Jedi, we will then rank our Star Wars.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll do another ranking like we did last year, actually.
Yep.
Since we have a new one in the system.
In the canon, if you will.
Yeah, and then I know we didn't introduce ourselves.
I just jumped right into it. I'm so excited to talk about Star Wars. Didn't even introduce ourselves, but yes, I'm Michael D. Friedman, and
I'm Martin Kelly.
And you can reach us on Twitter at I'm at Badger33, and
I'm at Marte_real1.
And you can get CinemATL at CinemATL.
That's right. So reach out to us. We still want to hear from you guys. Yep. We still want to hear about your films. And, introduce yourselves and then comments on the podcast as well.
Yep. I guess that's it.
That's about
Let's
it.
get to the Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the industry news. Let's start the industry news first. I know. We'll get to Star Wars.
All right, first off, industry news.
Yeah, so let's talk real quick about some movies that are being released that were shot in the Atlanta area. We like to let everybody know about those kind of things. So first off, I guess the biggest of the bunch is Jumanji. Yeah,
we've mentioned Jumanji before, so I think most people know what it's about, but a lot of people don't know that a lot of it was shot here, which is surprising considering the location of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
but
so it was big sort of reboot of a movie well loved by a lot of people, and Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson going to be in it.
And then we also have a movie called Father Figures coming out, which is
it's a
kind of changed titles a couple times. When it was in production, it was called Bastards, right?
Right. Yeah. And, stars Owen Wilson and
Ed Helms.
Ed Helms and a collection of cameos, I think, by various celebrities.
Terry Bradshaw.
And then Glenn Close plays the mother, I think, of those two in the film.
So the idea behind it is they don't realize that they don't know who their father is.
Right.
It becomes revealed that.
So a mission of discovery, I think.
It looks pretty funny.
It does look funny. And I always like Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
So.
And then one movie that's getting a lot of Oscar buzz, in particular for the lead actress in it, is
I, Tonya.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was filmed, at least a good portion of it was filmed here in Atlanta as well.
I was unfamiliar with that, but I guess it makes sense since knowing the roots of Tonya Harding, that... Southern.
Okay, but
just
all right.
I don't know.
Because everyone knows about plots of maiming people happen in Atlanta. Everyone knows.
I meant more of her background as
No, that's fine.
I can see how they would film in some not Atlanta locations, but some Georgia locations.
Right.
And for those that don't know, that tells the story of Tonya Harding. Honestly, some people that listen to this podcast might not even know who Tonya Harding is. In fact, Margot Robbie said when she first read the script that she thought it was just a fiction. She didn't know that it was a real story.
Really? I didn't know that.
In her defense, she grew up in Australia and she wasn't even born, I think, until she might have been a 2 or something like that. That event happened. So,
well, I think it was a famous story because of the Olympic aspect of it.
Yeah,
but obviously it became more famous because of the tabloid aspect of it.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
one's really good.
Definitely.
And then before we jump all the way into Star Wars, there was a really big news came down pretty much right before Star Wars was released.
Right?
Yeah, is that, and there were some rumors going on for a while, but
Sure.
it's fairly official that Disney is going to be purchasing 20th Century Fox,
Right.
The studio. Not so just so they're clear on this, they're not buying. A lot of people think they're buying Fox in its entirety. They're not buying the Fox network. They're not buying Fox News. They're not buying Fox Sports.
They're only
The
buying
main
the
networks.
movie aspect, right?
They're buying the movie studio, and they're also, I think FX is in the deal,
Right. Oh,
and
okay.
Nat Geo, the Nat
Okay.
Geo channel's in the deal, and then also their regional sports networks are also part of the deal.
I thought they weren't. I thought those were
No,
excluded.
they are part of the
Oh,
deal.
wow. So FX1?
FS1 and FS2
Oh,
are
FS1,
not
sorry.
part of it.
Oh,
It's
that's
the regional sports networks. So they're buying like
okay.
Fox Sports South, all the Fox Sports
it's
regional
really
networks.
confusing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different, because it is confusing because there's 21st Century Fox, which owns a lot of these
Right.
holdings, but they also own those other things that we mentioned. So, but the big news is more about the studio itself, the movie studio. So
Yeah.
Disney will now own all the Fox properties, including the Marvel properties that the Fox owned, the X-Men movies,
Wow.
Deadpool.
Okay.
Those they will own. What else? They will own Avatar, which to me is no big deal because
Right.
I think Avatar sucks. But
And the original Star Wars.
this is where it ties into Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, the Fox's 20th Century Fox has owned the rights to the original Star Wars, and now Disney will have full control over the entire Star Wars catalog. So
Well,
not that they didn't already own
Right,
the characters, but
right.
they will own. They'll be able to re-release. They do re-releases and things like that.
I mean, there's a lot of good things and also a lot of really bad things about this kind of merger.
There is. I mean, the first thing it's good is for all the Marvel fanboys
Sure.
who get. It remains to be seen whether they are going to bring the X-Men and them into the current Marvel Cinematic Universe.
But it makes
now,
it easier,
Now
yeah.
they have that possibility.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
might still try to keep them fairly separate, but now you have the opportunity to have Wolverine fight Iron
Right,
Man
right.
or the Hulk.
Yeah.
Or you got Deadpool in there. The funny thing is, the interesting thing is also is that Disney's always been known to be PG, at the highest. They don't do really R stuff.
Right.
So bringing Deadpool, or the Deadpool or the latest Logan movie, which were both rated R. That'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Although I have heard that they're planning on letting them keep that aspect. Because you wouldn't want to have Deadpool as a PG-13 character. He's not. That's not.
No,
what he
you
is.
want to go either G all the way or
Yeah.
or R.
So I mean, what I've heard is that they're stating that they have plenty of other labels, if you will. I don't know what like studio label. You know what I mean?
Sure. Like imprints, yeah.
Yeah. So they might spin off into like a Marvel,
Right.
a mature Marvel
Yeah.
brand. They're not going to call it. They're not going to
There
call
you
it
go.
mature Marvel, but
You got to pay him for that.
yeah.
Well, one of the things that I'm wary of is that Fox owned Fox Searchlight. And Fox Searchlight was a really good sort of sub major that dealt with indie like movies. And so now that Disney has control of it, they may want to do less of that, or they may not go for the same titles, or they may not
Well, you
do any
think
titles.
if they're purchasing, they're putting this money into this brand. That I would think they would tend to like keep that brand around.
But how much do they allocate towards it?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. And then the other thing about this is it's just one less option
Right.
for filmmakers and just movies in general to like have creative. It's all being controlled by
Right. It's a step
one
closer
company.
to homogenized content is what it is.
Yeah.
And
there's 6 major studios, and now there's going to be 5.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So-
I mean, maybe you can include Lionsgate in there as a major, maybe, but it does make things a little bit more harder for the smaller guys.
Right. So I mean, that's sad. It's sad, and plus it's Disney, and I've never minded Disney, but you don't want Disney to be so big that it's your only choice.
Yeah.
And
it still remains to be seen. I mean, this hasn't been approved by the FCC, so there's always the chance that it might not even happen. I mean, I think it's more likely to happen even than like the AT&T purchase of whatchamacallit. But I'm drawing a blank on that one. But I think it's going to be more. It's less of a monopoly than other previous mergers have happened. Like when Comcast tried to buy Time Warner,
right.
and they felt that was too much of a monopoly, so they the FCC wouldn't allow that to happen. So
this is less.
This
so
is
you're
less
right.
because
you got a better chance.
And like I said, based on the assets that they're purchasing, the fact that they're not purchasing the Fox network and all the other big or like the Fox News and all that stuff, I think it makes it more likely that this will go through.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah.
All that said,
so that's the industry news.
We're just delaying the inevitable for the people that want to hear about Star Wars.
Yeah, let's wait a few minutes before we talk Star Wars. I'm just kidding.
So one thing that I would say before we jump right into that, I'm delaying it again, sorry. But what I would say is, we talk about, these were some bigger, interesting news topics, but if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, we do like to talk about local independent filmmakers in this segment. So if you have anything that you are working on or you have in the can or, this coming out, let us know, and we'll try to give you a plug. And
definitely, but you gotta tweet us and ask us. You can't just expect us to know. Yeah. We know a lot of stuff between us, but we don't know everything. So you have to bring it to our attention.
All right, so let's get to the big Star Wars stuff. And first, we're going to talk about our top three
characters. So, top 3 Star Wars characters, and we're talking about through the whole saga.
So, and, we talked about maybe limiting it to, like, the newer movies, but we're just going to talk about all 9 movies.
Yeah. There's 9 now.
And so, why don't we just start? I have a feeling that we might have some overlap, but we'll just start. Okay. We'll just start at the bottom. We'll both name our top 3. And then we'll go up from there. So, you're number 3.
Number 3, Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren. Interesting. Almost. So he's getting there for me. He almost cracked my top 3. But my number 3 is actually also from the new trilogy, and it's BB-8.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And
we got a lot to talk about BB-8 for the next movie, but yeah.
Yeah. And then, so number 2.
My number 2, Han Solo.
My number 2 is Darth Vader.
Okay.
And I have a feeling that we're going to flip-flop on our number 1, because my number 1 is Han Solo.
And my number 1 is Darth Vader. Wow. Okay.
So basically, so we both have Han Solo and Darth Vader on the top. So let's talk about the ones that we had different.
Okay.
And how it's interesting. I mean, with the saga characters, I mean, I thought about Kylo Ren. I thought about Luke.
Right.
I thought about Leia.
Right.
I thought about R2.
Yeah, I thought about C-3PO. C-3PO used to be one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit older now. So.
Well, I mean, so for me to talk about BB-8 being like surpassing R2 for me is that R2 probably would have normally held that role for me, but in the past 2 films, I've really I think the personality of BB-8 is a little bit more fun than R2.
Do you think it's because he's so much more versatile and he's easier to insert himself?
Yeah, I think so. I think that really helps him get integrated more into the scenes than R2, which is a little bit more of a clunky droid. It's hard for him to get, he can't even really go down steps very well.
I thought of that too. Is that it's BB-8 is easier to get into a scene.
Yeah.
Than R2 used to be.
And he seems to be more part of. I mean, I don't know. They've tried to in the prequels. They tried to make R2 a little bit more of a action droid, where he just had jets all of a sudden can fly around, which he never showed in the original movies, but
which took place much later.
So, who knows? But I don't know. I think BB-8 is just a fun character. I like giggling almost every time he's on screen, and I just like, and especially when I went back and watched Force Awakens again, his character in Force Awakens is so great, and it's in his interaction with Finn and Rey.
Right? Yeah.
They're just, it's really good.
But you know what I think also adds to why BB-8 is easier to relate to is that more people could understand BB-8 than could understand R2.
Yeah.
If like R2-D2 was like he could talk to C-3PO basically and Luke.
And Luke, yeah.
You know, and yet BB-8 everybody seems
to know how to talk to
BB-8.
Well, then also I think BB-8 even though they made R2 a very expressive character in the original trilogy, I think BB-8 I can almost understand what BB-8 is saying in his bleeps and bloops. You know,
I don't. I don't.
I think they bring his character, like the mannerism, like he's more of an expressive character than R2.
No, I give you that. I don't quite understand him still. But.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I understand it. I'm just saying that with the body language, doesn't really have a body, but with his droid language, I just find him an enjoyable character, and I want to see even more of him on screen. So with Kylo Ren.
I mean, Kylo Ren has fascinated me since he came in Force Awakens. I've really enjoyed sort of his conflict, his sort of inner struggle for his own identity. And I've always thought, and we'll talk about it later for this particular movie, I've always thought there's a lot more to the story that we hadn't heard yet about him, and I was anxious to see it. And and again, he's sort of an extension of Darth Vader, who's always been my favorite character, and so he's sort of the new version of Darth Vader in my mind, and he's always felt like he's had that role, and I've enjoyed that role in the series.
Yeah, I think in Force Awakens, I thought he was a very intriguing character, just the internal conflict, and I think it comes even more to light in this.
No, absolutely,
movie,
yeah.
Which makes you appreciate the character even more. You may not like him more, but you appreciate his character more and the struggle that he's having. So.
And he does things. I mean, I like the fact that they've handled him, and he does things that are somewhat unexpected, at least at the time when they happen. Like when in Force Awakens, you don't expect him to take his mask off actually, and he does, and he's like, does it make me any less powerful without this crazy mask? It's like, no, he's baby faced dude. Yeah. He's still evil, which is cool.
So for our top two, we had them slightly reversed, and I'll say the reason why I don't have Vader as my number one is because I like the good guys, and while I love to hate Vader, and he's such a good villain, I'm cheering for the good guys, and Han Solo is always my favorite of the good guys.
But he's a rogue, so
he's a rogue, but but that's what I think that what makes him more interesting than a character like Luke or even Leia. Is that he's got a little bit more layers to them,
right?
And that's what I appreciate, and the fact that he is somebody who does right because he doesn't immediately do right, but that he's good.
Deep down, he does the right thing. Yeah, right.
And whereas a character like Luke or Leia, they're a little bit more straightforward. You know that Leia is going to be the good princess. You know what I mean? And that Luke, just by his very nature, he's the guy that wants to do good.
Right. Exactly.
And while I don't dislike Luke or Leia at all, I find that Han Solo is a more interesting character.
No, I agree. Obviously, I put him in second, just below Vader. But does that mean you're saying that I'm a bad person because I put the bad guy on top? I don't know. I don't know about that.
I'm just saying. It's what side are you on? Do you want the Empire to win? Or
I totally love Han Solo, so it's fine. I like Han Solo, and I like him for the same reasons you do. He's more complicated. He's a more complicated good guy than the other characters in the series, and I do like the fact that he comes to it on his own. It's like he doesn't come to it out of like a blind allegiance, right? It's like there's no blind allegiance in him. It's like he'll do what's right because it's what's right, and he decided it was. Which is really makes for a more fascinating character than someone who's the White Knight already. So I agree with that. But let's talk Darth Vader then, because you like Darth Vader enough, so you may be bad. But why do we like Darth Vader? Because that's an interesting concept. I don't know how to articulate why I like Darth Vader so much. It's just that his presence is so compelling. In terms of the overall arc of the series, and of course, a lot of it has to do with the early impression that he made as one of the most sort of imposing villains in movie history.
Honestly, I liked him better before the prequels.
Sure, of course.
Because I didn't necessarily need to know his whole backstory.
Yeah.
I wanted to. He was a bad guy. He was the bad guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even though the Emperor was the one pulling the strings, you feared more Darth Vader than you ever did the Emperor.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, and then just also because of the fact that he was that kind of more of not quite Kylo Ren impulsive, but very he's a controlled compulsive.
Right.
Like he's not going to fly off the handle, but if you cross him, he will extremely go to the ends.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the when you first see him like force choke somebody, you're just like, oh my gosh.
I saw an awesome meme the other day, and it was from Rohan, so I got to give him credit. It was that very first time you see him choking somebody for some information, and it said, a good leader doesn't hold you down, he lifts you up. I love that. That was so hilarious. But that's part of why I like Darth Vader is because of how cool and yet how completely crazy he was. If you really look at it, like
he's like the OG, right? He's like,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
He's the coolest guy ever. It's like,
yeah.
I find your lack of faith disturbing. I'm choking you
out.
out.
He made bad cool. You know what I mean?
Right,
like
exactly.
It's like almost like it's hard to think of a villain before Star Wars that really exuded the cool factor as a villain. You know what I mean?
And you notice that after that, all the villains, human villains in other movies, not even like sci-fi genres, in every other genre, all the other villains had to be cool, right? Because Darth Vader was cool. He was so calm about, how he's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Because he didn't need to use a finger.
Yeah.
And it was it. So, yeah, he's just so iconic. And that's why I like him. And that's why I put him at the top. Even though I like Han Solo, doesn't make me a bad guy.
Sounds like this reminds me of the Wreck-It Ralph scene where it's like, it's okay to be bad. It's okay to...
Right.
All right, so before we move into the review of Last Jedi, let's recap. My top three was, from the top down, was Han Solo, Darth Vader, and then BB-8.
And my top three were Darth Vader, Han Solo, and Kylo Ren.
All right, let's get into the review.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So now the big review, the special review of Star Wars, The Last Jedi.
Yes, and for those of you who are worried about spoilers, we're not getting into spoilers yet. We will warn you before we get to the spoilers.
Yes, which might come quickly, but we'll do a little bit of non-spoiler first.
I mean, it's hard to review this movie without revealing at least some spoilers.
Right, exactly.
So even, I think, so I'm going to jump right into it.
Okay.
I found the film to be very uneven, especially in the first hour or so of the movie.
Right.
But once I got to the second half of the movie, the last hour and a half, I was pretty much blown away by a lot of the stuff I saw on screen. There was some great scenes in this film.
Right.
Very, like stuff that we'll be talking about as Star Wars fans a long time from now.
Right.
Some very iconic moments.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So I think overall that makes up for the very uneven opening and first hour or so.
Yeah,
that's my feeling.
I think, I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's very uneven, and especially that it starts out a little bit rough.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, though, I will say it does make up for it, but I don't know if it makes up enough for it, honestly. I mean, you're right about the stuff we saw is going to be discussed, and it's going to be sort of, the things you remember. And so I saw it more recently than you, so I haven't processed it as much as you have yet.
I've had a whole day. I saw it on the opening night, and I've had a whole day to process it. So
yeah, and I've seen it 12 hours ago, basically.
So So it is one of those movies you walk out of not knowing whether or not you really liked it or not.
Right.
For me, it was a lot like the most recent Blade Runner, where I was like, it took me like a whole week to really process my feelings on the movie. So it's one of those movies that, and that's a good benefit of it. It's one of those movies that is going to make you think.
Sure. No, absolutely. And then, you know, to say that I didn't like it, there's no way to say I didn't like it. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it, and everyone should see it. You know, use that. Disney, go ahead, feel free to use that. CinemATL says everyone should go see it. But no, I enjoyed it, obviously, overall. But when we get into spoilers, and we can talk a little bit about the unevenness of the plot, but, you know, without talking about spoilers, yeah, it's very strong ending, and it's very, very iconic in terms of what you're going to see in this Star Wars universe.
And just from like a standpoint of the filmmaking itself, it's a very visually appealing movie. I think it's probably one of the better shot Star Wars movies. Probably, I think Rogue One was better looking than this, but it still had some very impressive visuals.
Absolutely.
In it. I thought the performances as a whole were pretty good. I think you know, Oscar Isaac, I thought he kind of surprised me in this one, that I really liked him a lot more in this than I did Force Awakens. He just didn't have that big of a role in Force Awakens.
Yeah, he plays a big part in this film. Sure.
And then, and the one thing that I found was a little bit weak was John Boyega's Finn role. I thought wasn't as good in this as he was in Force Awakens. But I think that has more to do. I can't really get into the story that much, but I think that's more to do with the story than his performance. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with his performance. And there were some really other strong pieces. And I remember saying, and maybe we shouldn't talk about it until spoilers, is that there was a piece I was really worried about, and that ended up being fine. So, you know, so everybody's performance was fine.
And Mark Hamill was really...
Well, that's who I was worried about.
Yeah, and, well, I mean, that's one of the roles that you hear a lot of mixed things about. I've heard, like, oh, he should get an Oscar for this. And it's not...
Let's not go that far.
No.
I was totally worried that, you know, now that we're talking about it, I was totally worried that he would ruin the movie.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, I had a bad feeling. About this. But it didn't happen. He did a great job, not Oscar worthy, but a great job.
Yeah, he was good in that. Okay, so I think we really want to talk about more stuff that impacts spoilers.
Sure.
Let's just give it our grade before we move into the spoiler review. I'm going to give it a B. I almost want to say B plus. I think for a Star Wars movie, I would give it. So, yeah, I think I'm going to give it a B. But as a Star Wars film, I'll give it a B plus.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I'm just going to give it a B plus in general because it recovers enough to earn the B plus. You know, obviously we're big Star Wars geeks. We would probably err on the side of A.
That's why I said as a Star Wars fan, I think I'll give it a B plus. But as like an overall movie, I think I'm going to give it a B because it was just a little too uneven for me.
Yeah, and you know the one thing about it, I did realize that it did feel long, only because we didn't really get into it until late, and by then, you had already wondered, like, wait, what's going on in the movie? But I can still give it a B plus, all in B plus.
All right, well, let's go on to the spoilers. Okay.
All right, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So, okay, spoilers have been alerted. So
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, you know that we're going there. We're going there now. And so I thought about coming into today how the last two times we've done Star Wars special, it's just been like gushing love fest, right? And I don't think this one will be the same because there's a lot to talk about on this one that is not all cherries and rainbows.
There's a line in the trailer that I think is basically sums up the movie. This is not going to end the way you think.
Right.
It's perfect for this movie. I mean, it's almost the theme of this movie. Mm-hmm. So, what I do appreciate about this movie is that Rian Johnson took chances with this movie. It's not going the way you think
in
it's
a lot of
go.
different times. Yeah,
but like. When you take chances, sometimes you fail, and there are plenty of places in this movie that fail for me.
Right.
Especially, like I said, in the first act and the first hour of the movie.
Right.
Is actually with the first, I would say, 30 minutes of the film, I was almost like, this is not good.
No, I agree.
I was almost like, So, I mean, let's just talk about it.
Yeah,
maybe we'll just go like kind of in order. Like,
let's talk a little bit about the very first. Like, the
very first scene I had problems with.
Well,
the very
what
first
was your
scene,
issue
the whole thing with Poe going up against the dreadnought.
Yeah.
For one thing, I don't understand the whole thing. Why did the bombers have to get in place over this ship? There's no gravity in space. There's nothing to drop the bombs onto. Like, that whole thing. So that might be a technicality nitpick.
Well, it was kind of weird. Big thing. It's like, why did the bombers? First of all, the bombers were so ill-shaped and so not. I mean, they could never be effective. Like, why did they buy those bombers?
Yeah, exactly.
But the one thing about that whole scene, like, that was setting up Poe and his arc, and I appreciated Poe. Like you said, Poe Dameron's character was a lot more engaging in this film than the last film.
Poe to me had the most complete arc of any character in the film. So,
and then I was affected by the last bomber and that whole storyline that set up another character.
So I mean, it sets up things. Yeah. But and then another problem I had with it was the whole thing about him calling into General Hux and then the whole like, oh, I'm on hold.
Oh, that was weird. Yeah,
it was like the humor. It was funny, but it wasn't Star Wars humor. And then it also made Hux really a punching bag. And I want my villains to be. I mean, you can give them a little bit of a razz, you know what I mean?
But not that much.
It was like, okay, you made Hux like really stupid. Like he didn't get it after the first time.
Yeah, I mean, this is no Governor Tarkin.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Governor Tarkin was not an imbecile, and then not saying the Hux is that far as an imbecile, but the way that scene played, it was a little strange.
So then let's move on to the next. I don't want to go scene by scene, but the next part of it is when Rey arrives and gives Luke the lightsaber, and his first reaction is to toss it over his shoulder.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny, but then it's also, once again, it's like it's in character,
right?
And then after us waiting so long to find out what was going to happen when she gave him the lightsaber, to have it just be thrown off like that. And I think that's why some people have a problem with this movie, is that there's a lot of expectations that aren't met. Yeah. So here's where that line comes in. This is not going to end the way you expect.
Right.
All the expectations that everybody had, all the fan theories had about almost every question that Force Awakens set up is reversed and put on its head.
Right.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing.
The tone of it is really what the problem is. Yeah. It's not necessarily that you reverse everything. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that you treat it so nonchalantly or even flippantly. That whole thing. People in the theater laughed, and that was effective for some people in the theater. But I was like, that's silly as hell. That he just tosses it over his shoulder. I agree that early on, and then I guess let's sort of like go past that a little bit and into the whole initial setup of Luke and Rey, and then they started to get into the Disney-fying pieces of Star Wars, where let's introduce this wide-eyed creature. Okay, I didn't mind that, but then you introduce these other creatures for comic relief too that were like unnecessary. Honestly, the caretakers. Yeah,
the caretakers, and then even like when he gets the milk and just
my god, that was even worse. I almost blocked that out. I totally forgot about that one.
But I mean, as far as creatures go, the porgs to me were not. I didn't mind the porgs. I liked the porgs. I thought the porgs were fun.
If we only had the porgs, that'd be.
If we only had the porgs, I agree. Right. If we only had the porgs, that'd be one thing. The caretakers was just like total comic relief. No reason to have them. But the one thing I will say about the porgs, and I've heard a lot of negative stuff about the porgs. Some people are like, they're not the Ewoks, which is what I appreciate about the porgs. They're there, but they're just there. They're not. They're not integral to the story, and they're just fun, kind of little comic relief every so often.
Right, and again, if it was only the porgs, no problem. I did like the porgs. The porgs were better than the other characters that they threw in on that island.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then even Luke's attitude early on of how weird he was a little off-putting.
I think though that comes back later in the film when you kind of think he's basically turned into Yoda at this point.
No doubt.
And since we're in the spoiler alert category, the fact that they bring Yoda back kind of reaffirms that he has become Yoda.
And they brought back the early version of Yoda,
yeah,
not the prequel version of Yoda.
The prequel version,
yeah, which is fun, of course, but it's weird too because you kind of get used. One thing about the prequel is you kind of like the prequel Yoda. That's one of the things that you can appreciate is the prequel Yoda, but we get Empire Strikes Back Yoda again.
Yeah, but I mean, it shows that how Luke is kind of following the same path as Yoda, as he goes off into his own and becomes this like curmudgeon kind of crazy guy. So I think that kind of redeems Luke's kind of flippancy early in the film, even though it was a shock when it first happened.
Right.
I think it kind of gets redeemed later.
I agree with exactly.
The bigger problem I had though in this first act though was the whole side plot with Finn and Rose.
Yeah.
Totally unnecessary side plot. Totally played for. It felt like Phantom Menace to me. Like the whole Canto Bight casino thing felt like it was out of Phantom Menace. Like it felt like they were filming on a CGI stage with a bunch of aliens that were doing stupid things.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Right down to the fact that the guy that finds their shuttle parked on the beach is like this, talks in a redneck. I told him not to park on the beach. And I'm just like, what kind of why? It just totally breaks from the world they've established. To me.
Well, I mean, you there's a lot of elements in that give you bad reminiscing of prequel stuff.
Yeah.
Is that not? I thought we were going to see a pod race, honestly, at one point.
Well, I mean, they was racing in it.
Exactly.
That gets me started on this. That other part was annoying to me too. Was the whole animal rights subplot? Like, I don't need to be taught a lesson by Star Wars.
No.
Don't throw in a message of aren't we being cruel to animals, or isn't it bad for war profiteering? That whole segment was so on the nose.
Yes.
Teach you a lesson. Just get rid of it. It would have made the movie so much better.
It was and it's the complete. Here's to compare it back to Rogue One. It's the complete opposite of how Rogue One was handling a similar situation. People needed to be found in Rogue One. They didn't go off and do silly shit. Silly shit in Rogue One, right? Like they do in this.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is like, I love casinos, which I can relate to, but but it's silly and it does look like. Here's a pretty cantina. You know what I mean? Here's a pretty cantina. And then even introducing it, and you throw Maz back in, right? Oh, my God.
The plot was stupid, too. Like, why even bring her back in? There was no reason to bring her back in.
But only because it's a major actress who was cast as Maz, they decided to bring her back.
There was no reason for it. It was totally inconsequential.
First of all, who knows Maz that well out of that group?
Nobody.
Han knows Maz.
Yeah.
Chewie knows Maz. Chewie's not around.
Yeah.
Suddenly Poe Dameron knows Maz really well.
Yeah.
I mean, we know Finn doesn't know her that well.
The one thing that would have, and I'll have to give credit to Jason, he told me it would have been so much better if at the casino the person they were looking for would have been Lando.
Oh,
that would have changed the movie entirely. And it
my God, that would have been so good. That would have been amazing.
Think about it. I mean,
that would have been crazy.
He lost
amazing.
the Falcon gambling. Like he's a gambler. You know what I mean? Like that's a missed opportunity.
Exactly. Sorry, Ryan, you missed that one.
Instead, they gave us Benicio del Toro, who's wasted in this role.
You know what though? He was about the best thing in that whole section because he was fun,
but he's not.
But
used right. And you have an actor like Benicio del Toro, and you use him in that way.
To be fair, though, between his exit, I think we're going to see him again.
Maybe. In a way, I kind of don't care.
Yeah, I know. I got you. And and what is sad about what we're discussing, this whole piece of it, is that you introduce Asian female main character in Star Wars, which I thought is amazing, and I thought. The actress, what's her name? Tran.
I know it. Yeah, her last name is Tran, but I don't know what her first name is.
Fantastic. She did a great job in the role. But what they have her and John Boyega do, in this beginning at least of the movie is I agree really bad. And so it's throwing you off. And we're now about an hour in, and we're like, man, is this thing going to be bad?
I mean, yeah, for about an hour into the movie, you're kind of questioning like how good is this movie?
Right. Oh, you're a little worried. Yeah.
So it turns around.
It
I
does.
think
It definitely
big
does.
time. It turns around.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the good. We talked a lot about the stuff we didn't like. Let's talk about what stuff we did like.
First thing I really liked plays into sort of top three again is that I liked when Rey and Kylo Ren started connecting.
Yeah.
While she's on the island and they're able to see each other and hear each other, and they started talking and questioning things about the Force and about each other and their pasts and whether they should be enemies. And I thought that was very strong. I really liked it.
I like that too, but I'm going to go back to a criticism.
Okay.
Before I go forward, is I do think they've spent a little too much time with Rey on the island.
Sure.
The training and the Kylo Ren. I think they could have maybe halved part of those scenes.
I think they could have,
and kind of got to the.
They could have condensed it, but it was at least picking
effective.
up.
Yeah.
Exactly, it was at least picking up at that point and getting interesting.
And
yeah.
the fact that the Canto Bite stuff was so lame, I was eager to get back to it. Honestly,
right.
I mentioned before, I think Poe Dameron has the best arc in this film. I enjoyed that part of the movie a lot too, and what I did appreciate was the fact that they start you on this path where you're like, okay, yeah, go Poe, you're the one that knows what you're doing, and
right.
They flip it on its head, and he's wrong.
Right.
Your hero is wrong.
Completely
which
wrong.
Which is a great, unexpected, I did not expect them to go that way. And I think that's when I really started appreciating the film, that the heroes have flaws and they're making mistakes. And that's kind of one of the whole themes that they try to build in this, is that, and in fact, Yoda even says it to Luke. It's you learn from your failures.
Right.
That's the whole lesson.
Right.
You're not.
But it takes so long to get there is what makes it really hard.
Yeah.
Which I think you're right. But I mean, at the same time, maybe because it took so long to get there, we appreciate it more that was right. Because Poe is completely wrong. He actually puts them in far more peril than he tried to save them from.
Yeah.
And he puts our other heroes
though,
in.
because later
Exactly.
when they're on the planet, he learns his lesson,
right.
And he understands that it's not always, you shouldn't always,
absolutely,
head face first into danger.
Right? No. So he had the biggest arc for sure.
I guess, and you also can't really talk about Poe's arc without talking about Leia.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought Carrie Fisher was a good performance from her, and impacted more the fact that she died shortly after filming it. I think it added a little bit more gravitas to the role. Mm-hmm. But I think she was very solid in the film.
Definitely.
And her character is interesting. Some of the things that happened in that first act were when she uses the Force kind of in an unexpected way.
Right. That was another good surprise, is that we've never seen the Force be able to do what it was able to do in that particular case. And even that scene, Kylo, her scene helps Kylo's arc too.
Yeah.
Because he makes a choice.
Yeah, he doesn't pull the trigger.
He makes a choice there that is like, wow, you see that he's still super conflicted, right? And yet it was an amazing, reveal of what the Force can do, which was surprising. Another surprise.
Well, and I know some fanboys don't like the fact that the Force is being used in ways they haven't seen on screen before.
What's the purpose of knowing more about? Well, you just want to. I mean,
do you want the same thing to happen over and over? That's why I liked about it. They do take it in different directions. Even the communication between Rey and Kylo Ren was something we hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
To take it even further, taking it further with Kylo Ren's character, one of the most awesome parts of this film is how he dispatches Snoke.
Absolutely.
And the ensuing battle afterwards.
Absolutely.
That is, to have this movie for none other than that.
Right.
I mean, that's.
And they set that up so well. They play with those. They play with those lightsabers. They show you what Snoke can do, and then they show you how in control Snoke is supposed to be, and then flip it on you like that.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
That's another thing you haven't seen in the Star Wars movie. It's like people using a lightsaber remotely almost.
Oh,
That was pretty awesome. It was, to me, it was not something that I would have expected to see on screen, which made it the surprise even more.
That was so effective, and so again, we talk about how long it was to set that stuff up, but maybe that's what made it so effective is that it did take a long time to set some of that stuff up, because that internal like battle with Kylo Ren and Rey and how that was going to play out, we didn't know how it was going to play out. We honestly didn't.
Well, and another thing I liked about that scene too was also at the end, it's like the easy way would have been to say, okay, well, Kylo, join us on the rebels, and
right.
Okay, I'm with you.
No way. I knew that wasn't going to happen, but
I mean, it could have gone that way.
It could have gone that way.
This is another reason why I have to give Rian Johnson credit for like, this is not going to end the way you think it. Well, like, I mean, a lot of people's theories was that Kylo was going to, get turned back to the light side, and,
right?
And it didn't happen, and I think that made it much better. And then another significant sequence in the film, to me, that I think will stand in Star Wars lore forever is Laura Dern's sacrifice.
Sure. The one quibble I will have is that it took a little while to figure out how to do that. Like, if she was the only one left on the ship, she should have thought about that earlier. Honestly.
Well, I love the visual of it.
Absolutely.
And it was so powerful and impactful. And
it was, but I have to confess that I was thinking, like, you could have done this earlier.
She also could have told Poe what her plan was earlier, and it would have,
True, she didn't have to have blue hair, but that's another thing. That's completely different. Was it blue? I'm not. It shouldn't have been there because nobody else had that crazy color hair.
And then I think another really impactful moment is the scene between Kylo Ren and Luke.
Right. Yep.
That was really great to me. I loved how Kylo becomes so unhinged and his determination to just destroy Luke, and I love the way they shot that. And I was reading something after the film, is that if you watch that film, if you watch it again, Luke never leaves the area where the footprints are.
Right.
So he's masking the fact that he's not there by staying within the footprint boundaries, and that it doesn't fall from. And they kind of make note of it intentionally, because you see Kylo's shoe like going through, but you always see Luke standing on where the red is.
Yes.
So it was set up there that he wasn't actually there, and I kind of thought halfway through maybe I kind of realized what was going on. You know what I mean?
No, and I honestly didn't know for sure because of the fact that he, it's a great reveal, and it could have been something that people think is a cheat, but I thought it was good, and it makes complete sense. It's been done. It's been done in the past. Mm-hmm. It's totally legit use of the Force, and they set it up. And so I thought it was great, and it it was a really nice battle. And
it was a great way to send off the Luke character,
sure.
I think.
And I don't know that we've sent him off because we've established who else did that before. That same.
Yeah, I fully expect him. I mean, as a living being,
yes,
it was an honorable, death. The fact that he millions of miles away and he's able to,
Well, what a feat that is for the Force. That shows how powerful he actually was, right?
Yeah.
Because how do you astral project yourself that far away? It was fantastic. That was really great. And what was also really great about it was, and this is backing up again, is learning about why Kylo Ren and Luke had their falling out, because I knew it had to be complicated, and it was greatly complicated.
Facebook status, it's complicated.
Exactly. Hashtag complicated. But no, I like that too. That's another aspect that really helped revive this film from being, like we talked about early on, a little bit off kilter.
Yeah. And then the battle sequence at the end with the speeders on the salt flats was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just visually, it was really cool. And I did appreciate Finn's attempted sacrifice.
Yes.
I'm not so sure if I'm sold on Rose saving him as much. Like, I don't know. I know they're trying to set up. I think they're trying to set up like this kind of love triangle between Finn, Rose, and Rey.
I'm confused about all those relationships in a way, but I'm like trying to figure out, okay, what's going on?
And her rationale was kind of an on the nose point.
It was, but you know what? She was so sweet at that point.
Yeah.
I was sucker for that line. I like that.
Yeah,
line.
I mean, it didn't entirely annoy me. It was
on the nose.
In hindsight, it seemed kind of on the nose. In fact, but see, the way this movie worked for me was once we got out of the casino world.
Yeah.
I was all in.
Right.
Which is kind of funny. I didn't want to...
Exactly.
No pun intended, but I really enjoyed the last hour and a half of this movie. Whereas the first hour, I was almost like, this is prequel level stuff.
I was totally worried about
some of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, some of it was good. Like, even the stuff that I had problems with on the Poe side of things, the battle sequence was cool. It looked good.
It looked good.
But Finn's whole thing was just kind of...
Except for the bombers being that
the bombers
ridiculous.
Were stupid, but I have more a problem with the fact that they were using bombers in a... There's no gravity in space.
It should have tipped you off that they created this special ship. I mean, that was the first part that really tipped me off that we might be in trouble, is that General Hux is like, send in the dreadnought. Yeah. Like, what did they call it? Why would they call it a dreadnought? Like,
all right, so we've talked a lot about
we can talk forever still.
And we've already given our grade.
Right.
But just to wrap it up again, I think for me it was a B as a film. As a Star Wars fan, I think it's a B+. I think there's enough that saves it to be a good Star Wars entry.
And I'll give it B+ on both accounts. I mean, I do agree that early on it almost went off the rails, but it did redeem itself so well, I think.
All right, so why don't we get to our
new re-ranking
rankings
of the 9 now. And 9 was the original amount that George Lucas thought he would make. Yes. So now we've got 9.
Yeah, but Rogue One's not really part of the Skywalker.
True.
Series.
Okay.
But yeah, we have 9 movies.
9 movies now.
And if you've listened to our podcast before, my rankings are going to be slightly different than what I had last year.
And mine too. Probably.
I think just things change the more you rewatch something, and the more that you learn more about other things and how they're connected, it changes your view on things.
Yeah, and to be fair, my ranking of this one is going to change too, because it is what it is. I've seen it 12 hours ago.
Yeah, so. So don't complain to us about.
Complain to us. We don't care. I don't care if you complain. Please do.
All right, so do we want to start at the bottom and go up, or do we want to just reveal our list? How do we want to do it?
I don't know. So many.
I think it's going to be so many. Let's just reveal our list.
Okay. So who goes first?
I'll start.
All right.
I'll go from the top down.
Okay, top down.
So number 1 for me is still Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Number 2 is Star Wars,
okay.
Or A New Hope, if you want to call it that. I don't want to call it that. Number 3 is actually Force Awakens for me. I gained a new appreciation because I went to the double feature opening night and saw it again on the big screen. I hadn't seen it for a while, and I gained a real new appreciation for Force Awakens. I really like that movie.
Okay.
Number 4 is another new one, Rogue One.
Right.
Number 5 for me is Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
And number 6 is The Last Jedi.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like... And then 7, 8, 9 are the prequels. And I'll give my order for the prequels. Revenge of the Sith at 7. The Phantom Menace at number 8. And The Attack of the Clones at number 9. I hate The Attack of the Clones. And I'm pretty much the only person that puts it at the bottom. But most people put Phantom Menace at the bottom. But I did want to add that, Last Jedi is at the bottom of all the non-prequel ones.
Right.
But it doesn't... It's not a bad movie.
No, exactly.
It doesn't really have anything to say about that.
And let me do mine. And mine's similar. I've got a little bit different order than you. Because top 2, I go Star Wars first, Empire Strikes Back second. And that is relatively new. Because I used to always have Empire Strikes Back first.
Yeah.
But I gained such a new appreciation for the original Star Wars that it has to be on the top. My number 3, Rogue One still. I love Rogue One. Then my number 4 is Force Awakens. And then my number 5 again, like you, Return of the Jedi. And then number 6, The Last Jedi. Now my prequel bottom rung, bottom half of the batting order is a little different as well. Revenge of the Sith 7. I do Attack of the Clones 8 because there's certain things I like about it better than the Phantom Menace. And the Phantom Menace, the reason it has to be last is because it set the tone for those prequels, and you have to give it all the blame. So that's why it's last.
I'll tell you the reason why Attack of the Clones is the bottom for me is that there's just so much that doesn't happen in that movie. There's like the first hour of it's just set up and nothing going on. Yeah, and then and the worst of all, the biggest thing of all is Anakin and Padme's relationship. It's just so awful. It is so bad. The dialogue is awful. The acting is stilted. So bad. And at least Phantom Menace had the pod race, which was entertaining. Even though it has nothing to do with anything, it was entertaining.
Right. Okay. So that's fair. So it's very similar. Ours are still very similar, although I'm shocked at how you let Rogue One slip down. But I just think
I will say the rewatchability for me of Force Awakens is higher than the rewatchability of Rogue One.
Really? I haven't had a chance to rewatch Rogue One, so I don't know.
There's more fun in Force Awakens than in Rogue One. Rogue One's a little bit more... It's got a feeling of dread because you know what's going to happen.
I got you.
And so I think Rogue One is probably the most beautiful Star Wars film, the way it's shot. I just think Force Awakens, like watching it again in the theater, it was just like, this movie just doesn't stop. It's just fun all the way through. There's no...
And maybe I've watched it too much because I've been watching Force Awakens on cable a lot.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm a little tired of it, and I haven't watched Rogue One very much a second time. So, I don't. Maybe it would change for me at some point. But I think it's very similar, and I think we're kind of in agreement. Nobody's sort of, even though we like these new ones, we love the recapturing. They still haven't surpassed.
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back or Star Wars.
And another thing. I mean, I almost put Star Wars at number. Empire and Star Wars are like 1 and 1A.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're both really the tops.
Right.
And I did want to mention, I shared it through the CinemATL Twitter account. So if you want to go look online, I shared. There was a thing about the way Star Wars was edited. Really intriguing, like mini documentary.
I need to check that out for sure.
It's like maybe 20 minutes, something like that.
Nice.
But it goes in depth about like how Star Wars was basically saved by the edit.
Right.
Like the original cut that Lucas showed, his friends, they didn't like it at all.
Wow.
And, by some of the editing choices they made, they really improved the movie.
I need to see that for sure.
It's a really fascinating
absolutely.
thing. So if
Definitely
you're get to take a look at it, go at CinemATL.
Another reason to follow at CinemATL on Twitter. Yeah. I mean, you should follow us both on Twitter and Instagram too. But at CinemATL, check that out.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Yeah, and the good news is, it's still great Star Wars.
Yeah, it's
still great Star Wars.
Still a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
So
okay. I'm calling it great Star Wars because it's
it's good Star Wars.
All right, it's very good Star Wars. How about that? But especially we did complain a lot about the first part of this movie, but the last part of this movie is really fantastic.
It is, and it totally makes up for the first half. And then when you start noticing the themes that are being built, this is really like kind of almost like wiping the slate clean of all the past. And in fact, like the characters even say it.
Let the past die.
Yeah, let the past die. And that's what this movie is trying to do. It's trying to say, hey, fanboys, you're too beholden on what you think Star Wars should be.
Absolutely.
Let people explore this universe a little bit more, and it's not all about the Skywalkers.
Right.
And I think, and we didn't really mention it, but the fact that Rey's parents are nobodies, I think, is a great reveal. Personally,
it is. It's like disappointing and not at the same time.
To me, it just means that the great thing about it is that anybody can be
just like we thought Luke was.
Was nobody. We thought
Luke was nobody.
It's Star Wars, yeah.
And then it turns out it can be nobody.
Yeah.
And then they even hint that it may be nobody again, right?
Yes.
So
Which is the only good thing that came out.
Right, exactly. And then here's bad news for you fanboys. If you don't like it, tough luck. Rian Johnson's got a lot to say about Star Wars from now on, so you better get used to it. I mean, that's just my party shot, fanboys. I'm a fanboy too, but whatever. Yeah, my hot take.
All right, well, thank you for joining us for the Star Wars special, and we will be back in the new year.
More movie reviews, more industry news, everything.
More insight.
Definitely. Hopefully.
Be there. Later.
no, no.